The following podcast hosts trainees from Latin America, Laura Saavedra from Venezuela, Andres Gomez and Perla Colunga from Mexico, Rafaela Muratori from Brazil, and Susy Bazan from Peru. The podcast is divided into two parts. In the first one, they will present current facts and realities of transplant, cellular therapy, and education in their respective country. In the second one, we discuss shared experiences and challenges. But most of the time, we will listen to them and learn from them. That's it. Enjoy.
Thank you all for your participation, for your time. Really appreciate it. It was basically, our first impression from the first meeting was that we don't really know really good things about each other, so we had no idea what the reality in your situation was, and then there were these notes that what your experience was, and that bugged me quite, to be honest, because I didn't think of that this could be an issue, and how would I face this if I hadn't this, let's say, different experience here. So we just wanted to share it and to show it, because I think there are a lot of trainees and physicians and even patients out there who don't really know that people with maybe with the same education and with the same knowledge face different challenges and try to work on that differently. And I think that we could all benefit if we knew what the reality of others would be. And that's why we just wanted to share that and to show that, and to ask you what maybe for first question, to ask you what in your country, what bugs you the most? What is at the moment the thing that doesn't let you sleep in healthcare or education? Or maybe Andres, do you want to start?
Sure. So I think it's very important what you're doing to bring us all together and to learn from each other. As a fellow, I remember what bugged me most was that we read the same papers as everybody in high-income countries. We read a lot of papers from the US and Europe and Asia, but get to practice in a very different reality. So there's very difficult to bring what is written in high-income countries to the realities in Latin America, and very challenging to do that. Like, for example, transplants are done very differently. Here, for example, just to bring one example, is viral monitoring. So we don't have nearly what is described as a standard in the international high-income country community. And we often do, for example, empirical treatment for CMV, because the turnaround time is very long. So you cannot read about that anywhere. So these type of situations that are very common for us, that is very difficult to find in the literature. So that's still what bugs me most.
And in what country are you situated, just for all of them?
Yes, I am in Mexico, and here's also my colleague Perla Colunga. We are both junior faculty in Monterrey, Mexico, in the northeast part of the country.
Okay, and how many patients are you dealing with each day? How many patients are you treating?
So usually in the institution, we do around 50 to 60 adult transplants per year, around 30 pediatrics, so it's almost 100 per year. All indications, mostly on an insured population. So patients pay for almost everything out of pocket. You always have to have that in mind to know what to request, which drugs to prescribe, what tests to do, on what can be avoided, or what is too much to ask for a person to cover. So we usually see patients that are either undergoing the procedure or are in the clinic as a follow-up patients, as well as patients that are hospitalized. We are always on service and do not have the access to advanced practice practitioners, such as in the US or other countries where there's nurse practitioners or physician assistants. We usually just have the regular internal medicine nurses and the residents, internal medicine residents, which help the fellows do most of the heavy lifting, which is also a very big difference with other countries in which attendings are not there that much, and fellows get to choose and to treat patients directly with a lot more responsibility.
Okay, thank you. And Rafaela in Brazil, what bugs you most?
When I come to think of it, I think right now, politics. We had a couple of unstable years here, and during elections and during COVID, I'm sure you all read about it. So I'm very scared of what's to come. And we do have a universal healthcare, so we need the government to fund our transplants and to believe that healthcare needs this funding. So I don't know what's next to come. Next year we do have elections, and it's very unstable right now. So this makes me very anxious. I don't know what is it to come. We always need the government to fund our healthcare and to invest in our universities. So depending on the government, I don't know what's going to happen next. So this scares me very much.
Thank you. And Venezuela?
Well, I agree with Andres when he said that we do things different here in Latin America than in Europe or in other countries. And one thing that bothers me the most here is that there are not enough hematologists working with us. So we have a lot of patients to treat, not just at our transplant center, but at the hematology department as well. So that's something that really bothers me and causes some anxiety for me, especially for the next year. So I would say that really shocks me or bothers me the most.
Okay, I see Yasmina is here. Maybe we give our impression to see what the differences are, and then maybe we share your interact on your what you think about other problems, and do you share them, or and maybe we find some ways we can even improve them, or we share our insecurity about how we would deal with that. So Yasmina, what is your most difficult situation you face at the moment, or you?
I would say in my situation, at this point, I'm a young attending. I just finished my training and I'm going to start, and I am specialized in transplant. I want to do this as a career, but still in academia, you need to perform, you need to care for your patients, but you need to publish, you need to somehow build up a research program. Otherwise, you cannot work on your patients and also your patient, like I'm passionate about what I do. So that's mainly my challenge now, is to be able to stay in academia. So developing my projects, and also this needs money, and this is frustrating. Like, yeah, how to find the money to keep going in academia, and because if I have to move in another center, I won't be able to work with transplant patients, which would be a pity for me. So that's my challenge right now.
And we should mention, maybe the others don't know you from the last meetings, but you just moved from Canada back to Netherlands.
Yeah, I was working as a fellow in Canada, and now I'm back to Europe. So I'm Belgian, but I will work as soon as my paperwork is done in the Netherlands.
Okay, thank you. And Lars from Denmark.
Yes, hi everyone. Nice to meet you, and nice that you're all here to share your experiences. So I'm a hematology and BMT trainee, currently doing full-time research in between my training. And I would say the things that concerns me or would concern the field of BMT in Denmark is that we're struggling a little bit with recruiting people into the field. We're a small country of almost 6 million people, and hematology in itself is a very small field within medicine, and BMT is not that generally well known of. So the recruitment base is small, and we struggle with finding the right candidates for this particular niche. Yeah, so that's what I'm already thinking about that now. Who are going to be my colleagues in a very small community?
Thanks. And Claire from the UK. Is she there?
Claire, you're on mute.
Yeah, sorry. So I'm based here in the UK and have worked in a few different centres. Paediatrician by background, but as part of our haematology training, we have to rotate and spend a few years working in the adult setting. And I think some of the big things at the moment, the fact that hospitals, as I imagine everywhere, are really overstretched. And when you're bringing in complex transplant patients, as more and more treatments and things like CAR T become more accessible, these aren't simple patients. These are long stay, complicated patients who develop other complications, and they demand a lot of healthcare resources. That then means they're long stay patients, which takes up beds for the rest of the population. And at a time when like healthcare resources are so stretched, I think it's like trying to get the balance right between offering people who might have treatments available, the treatments that may benefit, may cure them, may help them, may extend their life, be that adult or children, against the needs of like the wider healthcare economy, and how to get that balance right without completely overwhelming the system so that it all just crumbles around us.
Yeah, thanks. For me, it's also quite the same. I never thought I would say that, because mostly I thought it would be too cliche to say that in 2021 or 2020. But for me now in Germany, in Hamburg, we didn't really feel the pandemic, to be honest, last year, but now it's crushing, and it's quite disturbing, because when you're a trainee, you have other issues. When you just start out, you want to learn, you want to like dig deep into his patient histories, and but the stress level is quite enormous. And then you appreciate what you felt in medical school, where you didn't have any duties and you just learned stuff and you read stuff and you thought, yeah, I know it. Then you come to the hospital and you see, okay, knowing and doing stuff quite a difference. And that's what I want to figure out. But at the moment, there are some moments I can't, because there are other issues where we cannot really take patients because we don't have beds to spend, or other issues. And the other thing that bugs me, and that's why I think it's really, this one is really important that we meet and share, is that I think as long when the COVID pandemic will go on, and we will like face the first plateau of the hilarious experience of connection through virtual platforms. But I think especially for trainees, there will be a downside to it, where you cannot experience direct communication and see each other in the eye and see how they react and what they really think, because in virtual reality you can always say stuff and somehow get around what you really mean. And I think that's really important for trainees to see experienced physicians handling tough situations or see other places. How does it look like? That's what me bugs the most at the moment. But maybe let's go through each topic. And I completely get Andre's point. And I, as one thing, and that would be a question for you all, is because when you say you cannot monitor CMV, for me as a trainee in transplant, I just think, okay, what do you do then? I wouldn't really know what to do, because I always look at the CMV level and say, yeah, that's now I have to treat this patient, and without really focusing on the clinic or other questions. Yeah, Andres, what do you do about it? How do you teach or how do you talk to your experienced physician, or how do you deal with it?
So you learn to prescribe it empirically. It really depends on the type of transplant. We've learned to detect it and to treat it clinically, especially with the use of the Haplo platform. There's a lot of CMV in Mexico, so most Mexicans are CMV positive, as in the rest of Latin America, I imagine. So practically, a patient on day 30 after a Haplo with PTSI that develops a fever but is otherwise fine, then you gotta, if the counts are good, you gotta suspect CMV. If you get a long turnaround time, then you gotta start that valganciclovir, start treating the patient, because you cannot wait to see if they develop an organ damage or a disease. So you learn to do a lot of stuff like that with antifungals and, with lack of resources through experience. And there's, a learning curve that you need to do and to walk that nobody can teach you, but then you can learn from other colleagues. I see Alfredo here, who has been with us in our institution and can tell you more about what he experiences. And I think that is a very useful thing to do, to go elsewhere and to learn from somebody that is in a situation that is similar as yours. And I get completely the comment by Rafaela that we are dependent on the local politicians' whims, as we are in Mexico. There's something that is similar to what you, Nico and Claire, are feeling with regards to the resource availability, that in other systems locally, there is a long line of people that need to get a transplant, but are not getting it because of the environment, either the social, the political environment, and they need to choose and pick patients and allocate the resources that are so few and so many who need them. So this is a shared feeling between many trainees that do transplant locally.
Alfredo, do you want to comment on that?
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, we have almost the same environment between the Latin American countries. So we learn to treat them empirically, as Andres said. We don't lack the contact with the patient, but we don't have the funds to treatment right. We can give maintenance to many patients, or adequate prophylaxis, fungal prophylaxis, or even treat with ganciclovir. We have much problem getting those kinds of medicine in our patients. And the main problem is the access gap we have in our countries. We have like 50 or 80 patients waiting in the waiting list. So we have to choose carefully which ones are the best, are going to survive the haplo transplant, or which to choose. That's the main problem, right? The patient with 3 lines of treatment in mirror residual disease negative, or the one with in the first line with a allogenic donor. So that's the main problem. We have limited resources, so we have to choose carefully which ones to treat and which not, and that's the main problem.
And in that situation, are you also faced with the decision that you need to like consider, okay, shall I take the one with a better predicted outcome?
Yeah, and it's something you learn with the time, which ones have the better possibilities to survive, and which sadly you can treat or you don't have to.
Okay. And about accessibility, you mentioned ganciclovir as first line. So I imagine you do not have any letermovir on hand for
No,
prophylaxis.
even Foscarnet, it's a problem to get it. So we have to, don't even imagine thinking you have a resistant ganciclovir CMV, that's impossible to treat. Or doing the resistant genes, we don't have access to those. Or even in multiple myeloma, we can do FISH. So we don't know which ones to do an aggressive treatment or which ones just the transplant with the maintenance treatment.
Okay. What about the other countries, Brazil and Venezuela? Do you experience the same?
Yes, we do have the same, a very similar situation. And you ask, how do we do? Well, I think we do magic or something like that. And we have to rely a lot in our clinical skills before asking some test or something. And we rely on our clinical skills and our experience and our center's experience. What are the most frequent infections or complications? And if we have like a little suspect that this patient is going to present that complication, we treat it as fast as we can. So I don't know, we do magic or something like that.
And Rafaela, what do you feel?
Yeah, we do have limited access to a lot of drugs. We do not have Foscarnet here in my hospital, only in private hospitals. Cidofovir we do not have also, so we have to deal with these complications, and I don't know. I don't know how we do it, but I don't know. We just manage. It's like it's not even impossible, so we learn to adapt. But
yeah, I imagine the situation, as Alfredo said, is across the question. So CMV, for instance, because it's transplant, is just an example of
yes.
the situation you face.
Yeah.
One question would be, how, because Andres mentioned it, we all face like the publications guidelines. How do you teach that? How are you presented with the evidence that you need to balance with reality? So
yes, it is hard. We do have the PCR for some virus, so this is not a problem to detect. But it comes a time when the ganciclovir does not work and the patient it's getting worse, and we know what to do. We learn what to do, but sometimes we try to do some magic and to borrow from the hospital that has and try to exchange some drugs that we have that they need. I don't know, sometimes we do some funding, and some honestly, depending on the price, the residents, everyone gives a little money and we try to buy something for this patient. So it's, I don't know, it's every day we have a problem that we need to solve. Sometimes it's easier, sometimes it's hard, but the focus is always on the patient, so we make it happen. And another example is the VOD. and I am a pediatric bone marrow transplant fellow, so we do have a lot of VOD, especially in the primary immunodeficiency, and we only treat it with steroids. The fibrotide is not available, so but we're seeing that it's kind of working. Our patients are responding. So when you do not have the drug, maybe you try to find something that also works and nobody's looking. So I don't know, it's a daily struggle, but we need to make it happen for the patient. And also we do have a long waiting list, especially for the adult patients. Pediatrics not that much long. We managed to feed these patients that are high priority, like the immunodeficiencies, but we do, in my hospital, the line is up to May from 2022. So we have a long list of waiting patients to transplant, but I don't know, it's what we do every day, and a new struggle, and something we need to make it happen for these patients, because there's no way out.
And how do you prioritize? What's your selection?
It's primarily the immunodeficiencies, because the mortality rates are gigantic. So every time someone calls, hi, I think I have a patient that is a skip patient, can you fit in? We look at our lines and see how this patient, I don't know, this patient has Fanconi anemia, but he's stable, he's only transfusing. So we push it forward and fit on our unit. So it's everyday basis. We look at our list and our priorities and make it happen. But we really need more beds, and we really need more physicians, and we need more funding. So this is where we are at.
So you also have, maybe the others can comment, because there are so many like differences. What you just mentioned, you can like open a whole new discussion about politics that you all mentioned is a big problem. And that's maybe a huge thing. Maybe you all can elaborate on that, what you mean about that, but because I think that is definitely a thing. Maybe Claire can mention it, because politics in UK and healthcare is maybe more correlated, but in Germany we don't have that. There's a healthcare system, and yeah, people get sick and get treated, and you don't really conflict that with politics. We don't see that. We don't know actually what you mean by that. So maybe you can see, do you try to finance things by yourself, or do you go as a hospital? Do you go to the mayor or something and ask for help, or how do you get funded?
So we do have universal health care, but it's severely underfunded. So we do not have enough staff. Sometimes my hospital is a federal hospital, so we need to report to the federal government, and the fundings come straight from the federal. But we are underfunded, so the hospital do not have enough money to buy everything it needs, so it sometimes needs to prioritize. And we have a list of available medicine in the universal healthcare. So if you need something that is not available, your hospital needs to buy, but it does not have the money to. So we need to sometimes ask for the community. Sometimes you have to go to the law. So if we have a universal health system, you need to have universal health care, and this patient needs everything. You cannot limit the drugs he needs or doesn't. So we go to the law, and sometimes it takes 1 to 3 months to get the medicine this patient needs. So it's, I don't know, it's something that it's so natural to me that you don't actually remember that other countries do not have these problems. And it's so unnatural to you when I talked about it. So it's part of our being a physician in Brazil and in the universal healthcare that we have, that is the SUS, to deal with this kind of things that we do have, things we do not have, and how to acquire them and how to negotiate for this patient needs. So when we talk about government funding, there's the government decides which part of the country deserves more investment. And sometimes it's healthcare, sometimes it's education, sometimes the money just goes away. And we are underfunded for a very long time. So we do not hire new physicians very often, and nurses are understaffed. So I think it is a chronic problem, and we manage the way we can. And I think we do a lot of great things here in Curitiba. That is my country. We do about 90 children's pediatric transplants a year, and we have a lot of excellent outcomes. But it's very stressing dealing and having to work and having to, like, you publish and trying to study, and also worrying about whether this patient will have or will not have the drug he needs. I don't know how to put it. I think I should give you an example. This will make it more easy for you to understand. So I have this SCID patient that developed PTLD, and we do have rituximab, but not for this kind of patient. We only have for patients treating first-line lymphoma. So when I ask the hospital, can I prescribe this patient? They say no. It's for this kind of disease, the SUS, the healthcare, do not pay for it, so you cannot prescribe. So I spent about a month and trying to negotiate. It was a small patient, so we had a lymphoma patient that used half a bottle, so we had the other half. So that weekend I could treat the patient, but the next weekend I didn't have. So it's a struggle, and we have to deal. And after a while, we just asked for there are a lot of communities that help our patients. So we asked for them to pay for a couple of doses, and we could treat this patient after this. So there was a bottle of rituximab in my hospital, but it was not available for my patient. And it was a struggle and was very stressful.
Wow.
Yeah, maybe
Nina?
just to go on your initial question on how politics can influence, or when as a physician, how and when do you have to deal with politics? Of course, it has nothing to do, and it's not comparable with what Rafaela just told us. But for example, in Canada, they have a system a bit similar to UK. And for example, they cannot have access to MRD in AML. So imagine all the papers as well, all the recent evidence and the standards. You have to take treatment decisions based on MRD. And in Montreal, as of 2021, you cannot do it, just because, you know, they are in the process of negotiating with the payer to afford this. Of course, they can do it. They have the technology. That's not the point. But it's not funded yet. So yeah, as a physician, maybe it's not politics, because political system is stable in Canada, but it's somehow how you have to deal with public economy as a physician, and this can also happen in so-called high-income countries.
Yeah, and the question even is, well, as Rafaela put it, yeah, nicely and tragically, is where does it end? Because we are all facing like new therapies and new techniques. We talk about MRD, which kind of level do you measure? Which technique? Is it FACS or is it next generation sequencing? And that's yeah, what bugs me is the vocabulary. So we talk about all these alternatives, but the alternatives are not real in so many situations. So what do we talk about then? And the questions you all face are quite basic, and that's why I think it's so important, because that's what trainees think about, is not the what can be, but what, yeah, how is it? What can I do now? And what should I do now? And that's what you are facing all the time. Well, what when you see, let's say, a patient that comes to you with AML in Mexico, Venezuela, Brazil, Peru, what's the first step? So what do you think about? You think about, okay, how can I realize this? Or you think, okay, I cannot talk about it because our list goes to May 2022, and so that's what I keep asking is, okay, because the diseases, they don't wait until May. What do you do? How do you deal with that? How do you say to them, wait at home? Or yeah,
We just pray. We have to pray. There is nothing more. So we try to do the best, like doing the HLA before the time, or trying to wait as much as possible with the patient who can wait. So we have to accommodate the waiting list, or maybe trying to do the best in categorizing the patients if you can. In the center you work, maybe it's possible to do an autologous transplant, or maybe just chemotherapy. You have to find a way that it's easier for the patient and it's accessible for them.
I think we need to find ways around these problems and try not to imitate sometimes what cannot be done outside of the context where it is designed, for example. And at least in my institution, there is no waiting line. And the reason behind that is that we do not wait for a bed to transplant patients. We do outpatient transplantation. That has been the way to solve the issue. As many of you know, most transplant recipients just get hospitalized while they are doing well. They come walking to the hospital. You can do Q24-hour conditioning. A lot of the hours that patients spend in the hospital, especially in the first days, are very useless. So similarly to the donors. So the way we have solved that is to do everything outside. So if you do it that way, then you don't have to wait for a bed. Then you can start multiple transplants at the same time and try and limit the time that they spend in the hospital. So this is one strategy to make the line shorter. And there's other things. Rafaela just spoke about sharing drugs between patients. And there's this rule, which is kind of stupid, that you have to use a single vial for a single patient for a single dose, just because the drug company says you should. But if you do it in a clean room, under a hood, if you like, or do it carefully with a sterile technique, then there's no reason you can't share drugs between patients. And we do that routinely as well. For example, with very important drugs such as plerixafor, of which there are no generics in Mexico. So we share this drug between patients. For kids, it's very easy because they usually can do the leftovers from somebody else. We've done that with monoclonal antibodies that are very stable across time and so on. So this type of strategies to do something new, to solve the problems that we face is something that we must just do, because the politics are not going to be ever okay. We are not going to turn into Germany or the United States magically. So this will remain so. So that means that we need to go away around it, to find alternatives. And that's where research comes in. Creativity, you know, is, they say, necessity can bring about a lot of inventions and a lot of solutions.
Andres, sorry, I joined a little bit late. I'm Alexandra Gomez. I'm actually from Colombia originally, but moved to the US and work here at Cornell in New York City. Latin America is very close to my heart. I still work with a lot of people there. Andres, I love your work, so I wanted to talk to you more about that. What type of transplants are you doing outpatient? And is there any conditioning that you do not do inpatient, that you do not do outpatient? And what's your, just a little bit more on that, because I think it's so interesting for the rest of the world as well to start thinking about it. I think in the US, we spend a lot of resources that are should not be wasted like we do.
Thank you, Alexandra. So we started using reduced intensity conditioning, which is something that is relatively easy to do outside. But we have done practically all types of allos outside, including PTSI haplos. So there's not a lot you can't do with Q24 conditioning. There's challenges. We are working on developing a TBI regimen that can be done outside as well. But you just need to learn how to, and to develop a team that can treat patients that are so available 24 hours a day, caregivers that are always there, that are trained. Patients need to be close to the hospital, and you need to have a place in the hospital so that they don't have to be walking, you know, all to different places to get the labs and the drugs and the office visit, try to keep everything together. And I think there's practically a lot of ways. And there's another issue that is the availability of conditioning drugs and technologies to treat patients. For example, TBI is something that historically has been an issue in Mexico. Most conditioning, even in ALL, is done with chemotherapy. It's only a few places that can offer it, as well as other very important drugs that are recently relevant, such as Thiotepa for primary CNS lymphomas and so on. There's a big shortage of or unavailability of carmustine, of BCNU. So that means that we need to do alternative conditioning regimens for patients with lymphoma, some that may or may not be similar to BEAM or equally in efficacy. And sometimes it's difficult to get IV melphalan, so you need to do oral medications. We do not have intravenous calcineurin inhibitors, so you need to use oral tacro and oral MMF. So that's easy, because since we do it outpatient, we would do that anyway. So, and this type of things that you need to adjust to have it done, transfusions as outpatients as well, and also the availability to put patients in the hospital and to have them avoid the ER, which is full of patients that have other things, including, but not limited to COVID and so on. So we do, and there's a lot of publications about that we've worked on, and much yet to try and to do.
How is it in other countries? Do you also do many at-home transplants in Brazil or Venezuela or Peru?
Yes, we have tried, so we have managed some patients, some outpatients or some myeloma patients, and we had very good experience with those patients. Just a few complications that were handled at home. And even once we tried to treat a patient with a lymphoma that received beam, and she was handled like an outpatient. And I think because her parents were doctors and they kind of like built like an intensive care unit in their house with a private nurse and everything. And one of the doctors of the transplant team went to visit the patient in her house and we were in contact. But that's the only patient with that received a very aggressive protocol that we handle at home. But for the rest, we have some very good experience. And for the waiting list, where I'm not in charge of that, but we have just a few beds available at our center. And well, sometimes it's difficult, well, the way we decide who gets first is the patient that gathers all the medication that we ask. That's how we choose who goes first to transplant. The first who gets everything, that's the first.
We do not do usually the outpatient transplants. It's not something we're used to, but I'm interested. It seems like it could help us to decrease our line. But we do treat a lot of the post-transplant complications outpatient because we're always at the capacity. So we discharge a patient, the next day we started another conditioning. So when we have a patient that has some kind of post-transplant complication, there is no bed to admit him. So we do treat a lot of post-transplant complications in the clinic, in the outpatient.
Yeah, I think that's definitely a difference between all of us. Because, for instance, in Germany, if I would tell my chief to do an outpatient or at-home allogenic transplant, I think he wouldn't really understand what I'm talking about. And that's why we all also implemented in our e-learning platform now presentations on outpatient at-home autologous, allogenic, and even CAR-T transplant, because that's where what I heard of the first time in the US that CAR-Ts, or in Spain that CAR-T therapy is done most at home or at home from hotel, let's say. And that brings me to the next question is when you look at the simple map of Latin America, you notice that the countries are much bigger than your own in Europe. And at home transplant, then comes the question, okay, which patients do you treat? Do you treat patients locally in your city? Or do people have access from a rural area and come to you and stay at aunts or hotels? Or how do you manage that? Or do you then just treat people in your like nearest area?
No, most of our patients come from other states outside the city, and they ask to move to the city to rent a house or whatever, and just stay there. And during the transplant and after the patient is discharged from the transplant center, must remain in the city for at least another 1 or 2 months. After that, the patient, if there are no complications, is referred again to the treating hematologist and can go back to their hometowns. But most of our patients come from around the country, because in Venezuela, there are only 2 centers, one here in Valencia, where I work, and where I live, and the other one is in Caracas. And most of our patients, as I said, come around the country.
Yeah, Lars, you want to?
Yeah, I just want to say I really like the comment about doing magic, and I can understand now why you feel that way. But I'm interested in just asking how do you build like an evidence-based approach of managing complications or issues and when resources are restrained. I read a publication recently, I think you were involved also, LABMT, on how to manage aplastic anemia in resource-constrained countries. Do you think this is a good idea way forward, and do you have other platforms for sharing knowledge about how to do day-to-day clinical decisions when you don't have the same things available as you would read in the literature or in other guidelines?
Who wants to answer?
So I love your question about, is there somewhere we can ask? And the answer is no, not yet. But in a globalized world, I think this is coming, and this is a meeting is an example of it. So we can get together. You know, Twitter is a great resource to find these type of things, and not just for us, but for everybody around the world to ask. You know, when you get the rare complication or the rare event, to see if anybody has dealt with that before. I think we should be closer. The LABMT is a great resource for that. It's a young society that is up and coming that will surely be very important for these issues in the future. And I think there is a lot of opportunities in this space for moving forward. I'm not sure if anybody, I usually just ask, you know, more experienced physicians around and try and see other friends from other part of the country and from other countries to talk about them and talk about specific issues. But you know, the internet is changing everything.
I'm sorry.
Go, Rafaela.
But we do publish some of our experience and our data. We do have here in Curitiba a lot, and in Brazil a lot of things published about treating aplastic anemia and other diseases. So it generally comes from a place of need. Like I do not start doing things outpatient or something like that because I want it, but because I need. And it comes a time when you see, oh, we did it for 50 patients and it's working. Let's gather the data and prove it that it's working. So it's generally works like this. It's comes from a place of need, but it works. The magic works, and we then share it to the world.
Well, like in our center, we don't have like a data yet. We are working on that, but as Rafaela said, well, most of the things we do depends on the availability of resources and from the other doctors' experience. It's not like we have like a handbook or something to handle many things because we don't have most of the medications that are needed. But we are working in our data, and one day, well, I hope we can share our experience with all of you because everybody has a different experience.
But maybe this brings me to a follow-up question, because usually that when you talk about access of new therapies, for instance, you think about, okay, can I include this patient into a trial, for instance? And this would be another difference, inequality, that companies are not really fond of expanding their trials. They mostly concentrate themselves on US or even EU, but mostly US. What is the do you guys participate actively, or do you have the opportunity to include patients into trials, or do you need to fight for it? Do you actively ask people to get into, or what's your experience with that?
Well, we don't have clinical trials in Venezuela, and so zero experience in that.
Which is a statement by itself.
Yeah. Here in Peru, we have the same problem. It's very difficult. We have 1 or 2 per year. If we have a patient, we have to try to ask a contact abroad to send them there, or a friend who's working in another hospital in another country. But it's very difficult to try to enlist them in a clinical trial. Even in transplant, it's more difficult.
Clinical trials are rare in pediatrics in general. So when you talk about clinical trials in pediatrics in Brazil, it's even more rare. In adults, we do have a few, but it's always located in these universities and big centers. So we have to refer our patients to their city, to that site. So when you have a patient that is relapsed or refractory, and it's difficult for us to suggest they should move to another city to try to enter a clinical trial, but it's not our reality. It's very rare. We're not used to that.
And maybe regarding the current problems, do you feel any, like, obviously, okay, we all feel there is change going around and pressure, etc., but how is it mostly felt in your environment? Are there problems that are more aggressive now through the pandemic, or are there new issues you need to face? Are there exacerbating issues? What's your experience with, like, over the last two years with the problems you already faced? What became more and more viral, let's say, or problematic?
Well, like in other countries, most of the resources are destined to the COVID areas. And other thing that also bothers us is that, for example, in our hospital, all the residents from other services have to work at the COVID areas. And that's something that affects, and even last year as a resident, I had to work in the COVID areas, and that bothers me a lot. And the residents this year have to work at the COVID areas, and that's something that affects us really badly.
You're muted.
Yeah, just go on. Just sorry.
Well, I think we are at a better place right now on COVID here in Brazil. We have a lot of people that are fully vaccinated, but last year it was a big challenge. I also had to work at the COVID area. I'm thankful that the only specialty that did not turn into a COVID area was the transplant. So of course, we had problems regarding transplanting in the COVID. We had patients that were positive, donors that were positive, and it was very stressful. And of course, the referral of patients and diagnostics was a problem. But I think right now we are at a better moment here in Brazil because of the vaccination. And the hospital, my hospital was almost in the entire hospital was a COVID unit. Everything turned into a COVID unit. We have, I believe, 600 beds for COVID, and it was full. And right now it's feeling that it's something that is coming back to normal, and I'm very thankful. But I don't know, I think it gave a little bit more money to the public healthcare. Even though it was destined to COVID, we could benefit because we got new respirators and ventilators, and so it made everyone remember how important is the healthcare system. And I think we're getting past this right now.
Yeah, that would be a direct follow-up question. Maybe then also for you, Andres, is because you nodded, and that was our experience also in Germany, maybe on another level. But COVID showed you that there seems to be no issue of money, right? We have the money to spend, actually. For instance, here in Germany, we have this famous Charité Virology Institute, who now receives like millions of euros for research in Germany, and all the other hospitals think, oh well, what, why? And all, because all the years we heard, yeah, we need to cut money in the research institutions, and now there is money. And this is a particular issue for you guys, because I believe you almost every time hear, yeah, we cannot, like, for instance, spend our vaccination programs or produce enough vaccines for other countries. We don't have the money yet. You do have it. It's just I believe, I don't know whether it's true, but it's just a matter of infrastructure and will. Actually, I don't know. What do you think, Andres, Rafaela, Laura?
I agree. Particularly in our context, there was this fund to provide transplants for uninsured patients. When I was a fellow, a person just needed maybe around a couple of $1,000s to get a transplant done. And that was it. You could do it. So practically all people could have a transplant done. This fund was destroyed by the current administration, and its resources done for X or Y projects that are the president's interest, and were just on a whim disappeared from the purse. On the other hand, this when the pandemic came, so a lot of resources, a lot of hospitals started showing up everywhere, a lot of respirators and a lot of investments. And just when a couple of years ago we had to tell people with acute leukemia that were not insured that they had to find around $20,000 or $15,000 to get a transplant, which is still very cheap in the global terms, but for a person who is a single parent who works at a single job, that amount of money surpasses what they make in a year or a couple of years. It's something that is crazy to ask for a person to pay. It's very overwhelming. And I think that brings us to an important point that I wanted to address. That is that we need something very different maybe in the curriculum of training. Is that I'm not sure, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, that clinical research is somewhat expected in high-income countries. You need to be in a project, and you are expected maybe to publish, or to, if you want to get a job in academics, to get a grant, as Yasmina was discussing. But here, it doesn't equal a fellowship experience or a degree in hematology or a fellowship in bone marrow transplants. You don't really need to learn anything about clinical research. You can learn to do transplants, and that's it. So this is a very important point, because people can become BMT docs without the tools to research and to interrogate and to communicate what we are doing and the novel things we do maybe that go unnoticed because it doesn't ever get published. So I think there is a very big need in gaining mentors, and which now can be obtained internationally. You can find a mentor even if it's not in your institution that can give you the tools. There are many resources that can be accessed by trainees worldwide that you don't even need to be in your country. So I think there is a huge opportunity to educate fellows in that sense, which sometimes is lacking across institutions, so that we can provide the new generation with tools that were not available for some of us. I was fortunate to access a couple of courses and meet a lot of people from around the world, such as yourself, Nico, and now can say that it kind of opens your mind a little bit and gives you some fuel to try and work out these issues together. I don't know if my colleagues feel the same.
Yes, I completely agree. Research is something that it's secondary in our training, but I think we are getting there. Even we have a lot of difficulties. I gather data after my hours. I have this pile of charts and do everything I can so we can show the world what we can do. I think this talk isn't intended for you to feel sorry for us. Like Andres said, we will not become a higher income country anytime soon. It will take a while for us to get there. But we are very proud of what we do here, and we want to collaborate with EBMT and with everyone so we can show you what we do best, and you can show us what we do best, and we can make even greater things. So I think the point for me here to collaborate is not for it to be unilateral. We want to collaborate with you very, very much. You show us what you can do, and we show us what we can do and make this even better.
Absolutely. And I think on the contrary to what you said, we can, from as much as what you might gain from clinical trials and hearing about what other developments are going on in the research setting. Oh, sorry. We can gain as much, if not more, from you guys. I think the discussions we've had just today have been eye-opening for, well, certainly myself, and I'm sure the others working in Europe and the States will probably agree that I think we've got so much we can gain from each other through working together and hearing about how it works in different places.
I completely agree, and I share the feeling, and I'm impressed by the power you have, to be honest, because that's the feeling I really have. I'm really early in my training, and I believe that you can get you need, without being taking cliche, but you need to think practically, and if you don't do that, you're not good, and you're not really taking the whole risk and taking good care of your patients. And if you're all living in this kind of already looking at the next publication and the next science, and we all see we have access to internet, and we see how much bullshit, let's say, is out there in science. But if you're triggered by career, by success, by always getting to Harvard, to whatever European centers, and you want to go the next right step, and then you get lost in this kind of like eagerness to be the best, or you don't look at the bottom and see, okay, what's the problem I face and how do I solve it? And you guys do it every day, what we cannot imagine. and I cannot imagine I would be completely lost in your situation. And that's not a cliche, that's the reality. And that's why I think we need to like share this, and not only share it, but show it and see what can be improved in your reality, what needs to be improved in our reality, because there is a lot out there in the US, in Germany, in the UK, wherever, where things can be improved with your help. Because I think especially the for instance, the at-home transplant, we all can benefit from that approach, and we need to learn from you how it's done, right? And that's only one thing. So yeah, this could go on and on, and we would be really, really grateful if we could maybe make that a usual thing, to maybe do that with, maybe the first time was a quite general approach where we all would like to ask many questions and we would get lost. But maybe we do that, make that a usual thing, maybe with a specific topic we want to address, and you can share your ideas you want to create. And maybe the next time, Andres, as you said, with the LABMT Trainee Committee or Trainee Society, whatever. So we would like to, collaborate in the next weeks, months to come with you guys. Really, would be really, really grateful and happy to collaborate.
Definitely, let's do it.